What's the most hilariously unexpected plot twist you've encountered in real life? Oh, this one gonna be good.
I was first on scene to a bad motorcycle accident. A car missed a stop sign and T-boned the motorcyclist. I stopped immediately, so did the car behind me and a car in the opposite lane. This was a rural road in the middle of nowhere. The woman in the car behind me jumped down into the ditch with me, and the victim took off her headscarf and tied a tourniquet on his nearly amputated leg. The other guy came over with a large med kit bag, and while he was putting on gloves, said to the woman, "Hey, I know you, don't I?" "Yeah, we've met a couple times." The woman said to me, "I'm an off-duty officer. He's EMS. What are the chances?" A country road, middle of nowhere, and police and EMS both on scene immediately. If it was a TV show, I wouldn't have believed it. Biker may not ride again, but he survived.
My friends and I were in the Everglades and they wanted to go hiking. I felt so scared because of the gators and nowhere to go on the trail. So I stayed by the truck to wait and smoke. I almost saw a guy get killed by a gator in the parking lot.
My grandma and grandpa turned out to be from warring families. No joke, 40 people died on both sides. The feud was ongoing from 1870 to like 2003, but none of us knew about it. They got divorced 15 years into their marriage, so not too surprising.
In primary school, we had a World War I memorial lesson, and we were asked if anyone had any relatives who fought at the time. My friend brought in a picture of his great-great-grandfather with his wife. A girl also brought in a picture of her great-great-grandfather with his wife. The teacher said they looked similar. She put them side by side and looked shocked. We gathered around, and it was the same man who had kept his two wives a secret. Both had been married privately. They were cousins and didn't know.
Divorced my husband 36 years ago. Best thing I ever did. The day I put his stuff in the front yard and changed the locks, someone set him up on a blind date. He ended up moving in with her immediately, and they've been together ever since. Years later, one of our daughters got into Ancestry.com and started mapping all of our families. Come to find out, the woman he married is actually a cousin of mine. Turns out all three of us were originally from a little town in Florida. She and I share a great-grandfather. I am descended from his illegitimate family, and she is descended from the legitimate family. Then we find out my ex-husband is related to both of us. We're all distant cousins.
I'm good friends with a couple, and while I met them while we all lived on the West Coast, the husband grew up in my Midwestern town, is my age, and we've learned that we've shared space when we were younger without knowing it. His parents, also from and still living in the same Midwestern town, came over to my house one year for Thanksgiving. I posted pics on Facebook. My sister messages me and asks why Dr. Friend's dad is having dinner at my house. Evidently, the dad was both my nephew's child psychologist when he was a kid, he's an adult now, and my niece's current psychologist, she's still a kid, 15-year age difference. It's like our families are meant to be together.
20 years ago, I was a regular on an online law forum. Admin was a lawyer from a town 500 kilometers away. He occasionally shared anecdotes about his goofy secretary. At the same time, I met a woman I became close friends with. She told me anecdotes about her goofy best friend who was a secretary for a law firm. Turns out the goofy best friend and the goofy secretary are the same person. And it was interesting to hear the other side. Apparently the lawyer was an alcoholic.
I was in Japan and ran into a guy from Alaska. Told him I worked in Alaska years ago for a while. We became friends and I was showing him some of my Alaska pics and he got the weirdest look. I asked what? He said, "That's me in the background of your picture." I took a random picture of a memorial while he was walking in the background and we both discovered the fact while in Japan. Still makes me feel weird.
I was on a work trip, single at the time, and this guy started flirting with me. At first I was interested, but I did a little digging and found out he was married with kids. When I confronted him, he got really nasty towards me and I avoided him the rest of the trip. I heard through the grapevine that my rejection didn't stop him from cheating on his wife with others. Fast forward a year later, I find out Cheater had been let go from his job due to budget cuts. At this point, I had started dating my now husband. When I met my Fael, I learned that not only do a Fael and I work in the same field, Fael is Cheater's former boss. When we were talking about mutual people we know and Cheater's name popped up, I made a comment about how he sucks and cheats on his wife. Fael goes, interesting, he just called me yesterday to see if we're hiring again. Happy to report that Cheater hasn't been rehired.
A doctor was really mean to me and giving me the side eye because she didn't like it when I asked if it was possible for me not to take meds for her diagnosis until the test results came back. She tried to handle me out of her clinic, which took me by surprise, and I had to grab my jacket before I was pushed out of the room. In the madness, my work ID badge fell out of it and she picked it up, then went very pale. She realized I was a senior manager at the same hospital as her. She was nice as pie afterwards.
My great-uncle was a Jesuit priest. He sort of always kept to himself. He was very serious, bit of a curmudgeon. My dad gets a phone call in the middle of the night in 2005. Great-uncle says he needs my dad to pick him up immediately from Port Washington, Wisconsin. My dad drives from Indianapolis to Wisconsin to get my great-uncle. My great-uncle is living in a mansion on the water. My dad is trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Long story short, when my great-uncle was teaching at a well-known Jesuit university, he fell in love with a young woman and she with him. They secretly led a life together, and when he was 97 and she 80, she passed away. He had no idea what to do. They had always planned for him to die first. But to make this wilder, he still went about as a priest. He took the vow of poverty, hung out with priests, etc. Martha, his girlfriend, went bid with IBM and became a millionaire. She took my great-uncle all over the world, they did fancy things. He even had a different name when he was with her. After she died, my great-uncle lived with my mom and dad. When my mom took him to the doctor, they couldn't find any of his records. After a few minutes, he said, "Oh, check under the name Peter Rockford," and they found him. My great-uncle was a total bad boy. I'm not sure he could get away with this today. Maybe he could. He lived to be 103.
I had a local Mary Jane shop by me that was fire. The guy who ran it was an awesome dude, as well. One day, I'm in and it's pretty dead. Well, I bought some good stuff and got entered in a raffle. He asks if I could record it for his Instagram. No problem at all. Draw 1 for 3 RD place prize, second draw for second place price. And grand prize. He pulls the name and calls it out, and it was me. We both lost it and start yelling, "It's not rigged, it's not rigged." I came home with a ton of premium swag and Mary Jane. Mind was blown. His reaction was the coolest, his jaw dropped and couldn't stop smiling.
Finding out that I happened to have bedded another set of cousins after saying I would never do it again, even though both times I had no idea these people were related.
Thought I accidentally sent a text complaining about my boss to my boss. Turns out, it was actually my friend with the same name. Lesson learned, always double check the contact before venting.
My mother was on a jury duty when my sister and I were teenagers. It was a Doug's case. My mother said self-righteously she was thankful that her children weren't stupid enough to get involved in Doug's. Well, both my sister and I were involved with things like that at the time. I stopped pretty young. But my sister didn't and ended up passing due to an overdose at 30. Before that, my mom had no knowledge of her addiction.
Went on a date with this guy. Went well. Next morning we got breakfast in this cute little cafe near my uni with outdoor seating. While we were sat outside eating, he recognizes his aunt walking by and says hi. His aunt was my lecturer. She was not happy to catch us in what was clearly the morning after. I felt too uncomfortable dating a guy who referred to my lecturer as auntie, so I ended it. Few guys later, I meet this new guy. We like each other, we go on a few dates, he decides to take me to a family function. One of his uncles was also my lecturer. And this is what happens when you pick a uni that gives fee waivers to relatives of staff. Ha ha ha, oh my.